Strap on your seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. You're about to go on a journey. It's First Contact Radio with Joshua Poet.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Dirk. Welcome to First Contact Radio. We begin a new week. It is the 5th of August, 2019. FirstContactRadio.com is a place you can go to check out all the links from today's show. First thing, take the word political correctness and throw it away because you're not going to hear that on this show. This is the show where we talk about the battle of good and evil. Sometimes you can't mince words because evil doesn't play fairly. Evil isn't out there to see to it that good people get their day in court. Evil is only out there to serve the cause of evil. And we need to be able to be aware of it. Right now we're in a crazy time in society where there is a lot of evil and it's being misinterpreted. It's being missed. The people who are engaged in the most evil behavior there is are pointing their fingers elsewhere because they can't seem to understand that they are the ones who are causing the problems. Over this weekend, we all heard about the shootings that went on. I can assure you that what they are describing on the mainstream media is not really what happened. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, let's take a look at some of the things that were going on just prior to the shootings that we didn't hear about because the shootings went on and took up all of the news cycle. Here we have, dated August 2nd, new evidence unveils disturbing facts about Hillary's email scandal. FBI is implicated in destroying evidence to benefit Clinton. In breaking news, the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLU, Jay Sekulow's organization, not related to his role as the president's attorney, has obtained actual copies of the immunity agreements pertaining to Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson in the Hillary email scandal. This was a stunning litigation win, hard fought after years of litigation by the ACLJ attorneys who were unable to extract the documents through the normal Freedom of Information Act process due to lack of cooperation by the government. In reviewing the agreements uncovered, keep in mind that Cheryl Mills was Secretary Clinton's chief of staff at the State Department, and then, bizarrely, she subsequently served as Clinton's attorney representing her in the email scandal. Heather Samuelson worked for Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign and then became a senior advisor to her at the State Department, as well as the White House liaison. Somehow she also became one of Clinton's personal attorneys during the email case. The immunity agreements issued by the government were crafted so that the agencies could extract information from the parties, despite the fact that this is not necessary because DOJ has the power to require that the information be turned over. Clinton kept classified emails on a private server in violation of federal law, and the immunity agreements reveal that both Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson were actively involved in the cover-up of these emails as well as the destruction of evidence. According to Jordan Sekulow, executive director of the ACLJ, it is extremely unusual someone involved in a criminal cover-up who needs an immunity deal to ensure the evasion of jail time later becomes the attorney representing the other potential criminal or co-conspirator. These agreements were issued with the DOJ and the FBI. They asserted that Mills and Samuelson would turn over the computers to them, but stipulated that they weren't turning over custody and control. This critical point is legal and factual bunch of bunk. The Freedom of Information Act statute applies to information in the agency's custom and control. Anything not in their custody or control cannot be Freedom of Information Act. It is impossible to have an agency physically have a computer and not to have it in their custody and control. Custody and control is not something that suspects have to expressly give over or agree to give over. When they give over the evidence, they obviously, as a matter of fact, are also giving the agency custody and control over that evidence. Okay, so this came out. Why would the FBI not want this to get out? The deep state that are still out there? Well, come on, you know why. You know why. Here we have another story that came out. This was on the 31st of July. U.S. federal court exposes Democratic Party conspiracy against Assange and WikiLeaks. Judge dismisses DNC lawsuit. In a ruling published late Tuesday, Judge Kotel of the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York delivered a devastating blow to the U.S.-led conspiracy against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. In his ruling, Judge Patel, a Bill Clinton nominee and former assistant special prosecutor for the Watergate Special Prosecution Force, dismissed with prejudice a civil lawsuit filed April 2018 by the DNC, alleging that WikiLeaks was civilly liable for conspiring with the Russian government to steal DNC emails and data and leak them to the public. Jennifer Robinson, a leading lawyer for Assange and other WikiLeaks attorneys, welcomed the ruling as an important win for free speech. This decision exposes the Democratic Party in a conspiracy of its own to attack free speech, cover up the crimes of U.S. imperialism, and the corrupt activities of two parties of the Wall Street. Okay, so more to this, but that's a big, big win, and we'll see where it goes from there. We know it wasn't Julian Assange. We know Seth Rich is the name we should now be looking towards, because if Julian didn't do it, then we have to say, well, who did? Julian's pretty much told us without actually saying the name that it was Seth Rich. And then, of course, we've had Kim.com who has come out saying it was Seth Rich that provided the information. So, again, we have another incident involving the DOJ of Obama and shenanigans happening around that whole thing. All right, so the shooting was horrific. These things should not ever happen. Unfortunately, they do, and we have to find a way to deal with them. We could deal with them logically, or we could deal with them emotionally. Emotionally doesn't do any good for us, because then we have knee-jerk reactions because of how we feel, and that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, because maybe on another day we feel a different way. And so if we're basing everything on our feelings, then our systems of how we do things is going to be determined on how we feel any given period of time, and that doesn't have any consistency to it. Over the years, there have been events called false flag events that have occurred. A false flag event is an operation that is used in order to deceive somebody. False flags come from the idea, think of pirate ships on the high seas, and the pirate ships wanted to go and they wanted to fight, let's say, the British. But they knew if they just sailed up to the British ship with their pirate flag flying, that they would be found out and they probably wouldn't get that far. So they came up with a brilliant idea. Let's be deceptive. Let's fly the British flag until they get close, and then when they get close enough to shoot, raise the pirate flag, and now you go ahead and do your attack. That term false flag is there because they ran the false flag and then they ran the real flag. So a false flag information or operation is one where you do something in order to deceive. How are these things used? Well, we see them in America being used where an event is done to get the public all emotionally caught up in something, and the knee-jerk reaction is to go to war. That's what it's been over the years. False flag, war. False flag, war. We can go and we can look from Operation Northwards and the documents there to see how they were planning on blowing up American ships, killing American people in order to get us into the war with Cuba. However, that didn't happen. It was averted, but we do have the plans to know what was going on. Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag incident, got us into a war. We go down the road. We have other false flag incidents. 9/11 was a big false flag incident. Sandy Hook, the Boston Marathon, and most recently this one. False flag doesn't mean somebody didn't get hurt. Quite the contrary. False flag simply means that somebody put some planning into this event in order to make it and perhaps implicate those or deceive those who are trying to find out what really happened. Now, how could we see some of this playing out here? Well, for instance, we have information about the Ohio shooter, and here is a obituary for the Ohio shooter. The only problem is the obituary is from February 2014. How could the shooter, and it lists here in the obituary his name and his information, and it has relatives, his sister that is listed as the sister of him now. How could he have died, and how could he have been there? Is he a walking zombie, Or is he being used by those who are trying to cover up what they really did? It is something that needs to be looked at, but that is one of the things that is going on that they don't want to let you know. We have other information where, though, it's been determined that the Ohio shooting suspect described himself as a socialist, advocated violence against fascists. Ohio shooting suspect Connor Betts was a registered Democrat who posted pro-socialist content on social media, along with repeated indications that he favored gun control, violence against fascists, and white supremacists, and Satanism. Okay? So you can find his links here. He's talking about he wants socialism. He's not going to wait for idiots to finally come around to that understanding. Says he describes immigration detention centers as concentration camps, writing, cut down the fences, slice ice tires, throw bolt cutters over the fences. The hyperbolic language popularized by Alexandria Ocasio also was used by 69-year-old Antifa member who attacked an immigration facility before he was shot. And also, Betts said he was a supporter of Elizabeth Warren and indicated his support for AOC. Sharing an article from Nancy Pelosi. And so there's that. And then there's even more of an article about this guy here where he says Ohio shooter Connor Betts was a leftist Antifa supporter, praised Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Okay, now we also have, in regards to the El Paso shooting, you can go, and there's plenty of evidence, trying to scrub it offline, but witness accounts of seeing more than one shooter. More than one shooter. Shooters wearing black and wearing masks. There were up to 4 shooters that were described. When you look at the pictures that they posted of the shooters, a funny thing has occurred. They posted one picture of this kid named Patrick Crucius, and then later there was a different picture instead of the one they originally put for the same guy. So either they got it wrong or they're trying to pretend that people really don't remember that the other shooter looked different than the current one that they put up. Either way, it's very bizarre, just another piece of the puzzle that something is not right with this. Something is definitely not right. But again, both shooters have now been associated with Antifa. Both shooters, again, I repeat, have been associated with Antifa. That means Antifa now gets credited with 29 murders over the course of this last weekend. Of course, there's been big challenges on the forums. The 8chan forum, which is a place that has thousands and thousands of different types of pages and sections over there. I believe 19, 20,000 to be exact. It's being demonized right now and was pulled down because the security company, or the company providing security, Cloudflare, decided that they weren't going to support anything going on because of the manifesto that was found over there on 8chan. Again, as I said, there's nearly 20,000 different places on 8chan, so you can't lump them all into one just because there was a manifesto. But the manifesto that was discovered didn't come out before the shooting, as they're trying to say. It came out after the shooting. And there were events that were discussed in the manifesto that the shooter did not obviously go through. So again, it makes one wonder whether or not the one who did the shooting and was involved was actually the same one who wrote the manifesto. All kind of questions about this, but this was not a single shooter. This was a team of shooters. As I said, up to 4 were seen by witnesses. So either these witnesses are all liars, or those who are trying to say the lone gunman was doing it is lying. But somebody's not telling the truth. Now, we've got some weird footage of Beto O'Rourke. He's asked about this, and he laughs. He starts describing what's going on, and he laughs. You can check out the video. I'll have it up on the link, firstcontactradio.com. You have to ask yourself, why is Beto O'Rourke laughing when he's describing the horrific scene that occurred? Well, because Beto O'Rourke is not a stable individual. Here's another link. Beto O'Rourke's writing services showing how he fantasized about killing children and plotting mass murders. Keep in mind that this lunatic is running for president of the U.S. One thing you didn't know: while a teenager, he acknowledged in an exclusive interview he belonged to the oldest group of computer hackers in U.S. history, the highly influential Cult of the Dead Cow, jokingly named after an abandoned Texas slaughterhouse. He's notorious for releasing tools that allowed ordinary people to hack computers using Microsoft Windows. It's also known for inventing the word hacktivism to describe human rights-driven security work. Members of the group have protected O'Rourke's secret for decades, reluctant to compromise his political viability. But now in a series of interviews, CDC members have acknowledged O'Rourke is one of their own, and you can go on from there. Okay? Now, one of the things we need to be aware of is that these events that take place do often happen with deep state actors that are involved. The FBI has been doing this for a long while. Here's a story. Says this one was the date, 8/17/17, so about a year ago. Parents catch FBI and plot to force mentally ill son to be a right-wing terrorist. Well, many of these cases, originally released 8/17/17, become a nearly weekly occurrence. Somewhere in some state, the FBI will announce they foiled yet another terrorist plot and saved lives. However, as the data shows, the majority of these cases involve psychologically diminished patsies who've been entirely groomed, armed, and entrapped by FBI agents. Simply put, the FBI manufactures terror threats and then takes the credit for stopping them. Okay? Takes credit for stopping them, and until we are aware of what's taking place, well, we're not going to get, catch on. This has been happening for a long while. The deep state that Trump administration is fighting against has been in place for a long, long time. Okay, so it's not so easy to take down. And there's a big effort, obviously, these days to try to make that happen. Antifa is running crazy out there. We have all of these wacky socialist groups, and there was a convention that was found, a Democratic Socialist of America convention. I put a link to a short clip on here where you can see a couple of very emotionally triggered individuals get on the microphone at this event and talk about how they were triggered by things that were said there, followed by somebody else getting up talking about how they were emotionally triggered by the person describing the emotional triggering that was going on. And these people basically, for lack of a better word, I'd say are all wacko. Okay? These are people that obviously have some real issues, talking about how their anxieties are being triggered by the events that are going on there. Now, if they're being triggered in their own location by others who are of the similar mindset, just imagine how it is if these individuals go into the world. Okay? This is the problem we have. This is the problem we have when young men and young women have been taught information that is so inaccurate about the world. They grow up being these confused individuals that can hardly cope with life, thinking that they understand how things operate, but they're not. They're just barely able to deal with the own emotional challenges that life is throwing at them, and their reaction is to be violent. Reaction is to be violent. So today, President Trump came out. He did a bit of a talk about what was going on. He mentioned a few things that they are looking at and considering. One of the things he talked about was how there is a glorification of violence in our society. You know what? He's absolutely right. Now, he mentioned video games, but what he didn't mention was the glorification of violence that comes out of Hollywood. The same Hollywood actors that are out there trying to tell you that there shouldn't be gun violence in the world make lots of money making movies that glorify gun violence. So if Hollywood is really, really, really serious about wanting to stop gun violence, I would think the first thing that should be done is Hollywood filmmakers and television producers should stop making programs that contain all sorts of need gun violence. That would be a good first place to start. But we both know that's not going to happen because Hollywood is filled with hypocrites who at one hand are going to say, stop the gun violence, but only if it doesn't affect their ability to make money. Because Hollywood wants to make money. They want to shoot 'em up movies. Why? Because they believe in Hollywood that in order to make a movie good, you got to have stuff that blows up. You have to have people that get shot. Well, if those are the conditions that you have to make a good movie, and if we're conditioned to believe that's what we have to have, then that's what we're going to crave. And, of course, that spills over from movies into other places in life. We see copycats going into the world, doing the things they saw in the movies, acting these stupid ways, the things they see on TV shows, acting these stupid ways, thinking this is right because the television or the movie stars or the music stars let them know that this was okay. Ariana Grande goes in, licks a donut. People think this is great. Now you got a whole string of liberal copycats who think that they can go in and just lick ice cream and do all the other kind of stupidity that they're doing. Of course, Ariana Grande didn't go to jail and get in trouble for this because she's a famous celebrity, but all these other individuals who are out there copycatting, well, they are getting in trouble. Most recently, there was a woman in, don't remember the state, decided that she was going to pee on potatoes. Peeing on potatoes. Security cams caught her. She turned herself in because she didn't want that to be the way that she was known to the world as the pee-pee potato girl. But guess what? Too late. She did it. She was seen on video. She's now got to live with the reputation that she caused herself as the pee-pee potato girl. Why did she do that? Because she was led to believe that that kind of behavior is good. And we've got a battle for the mind going on. We have weak-minded individuals out in the world who are being told things and are believing them hook, line, and sinker. Part of the problem we have is that the attention span of most Americans is so short that they can't remember from one event to the next. So a shooting occurs, and then the next one occurs, and people forget about the ways in which the last one occurred to miss the fact that they're running the same game plan this time. And since they didn't catch on this time, then they do it again. It's just like the way in which the Islamic conquest has been going on. Muhammad and his followers went into Medina as refugees seeking asylum. It worked. They got brought in. They turned on the people that brought them in, took over, and the conquest began. All these years later, 1,300 years later, they're still going into places, claiming to be refugees, seeking asylum, and still conquering the places that they've gone into. Why? Because it's a trick that worked 1,300 years ago, and people still haven't caught on. People still haven't figured it out, so they can run the same trick over and over and over. When Americans catch on, then it's over. It's up to Americans. It's up to Americans to figure that one out. Okay, so we need to understand if we're going to be fixing the problems that we have to understand that there's some force out there that's kind of people into these evil ways. It's not just humans that are being evil for the sake of being evil, because humans copy something. Humans are influenced by other things. Again, I bring up St. Paul and his words that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the things that we don't see, the powers and the principalities. Here's an article recognizing the tactics of the enemies coming from Bible.org. When the word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that had built the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors of the gate, Sanballat and Geshem sent me to the message, come, let us meet together in one of the villages of the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messages to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great project, cannot go down. Why should the work stop me? Will I leave you and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide with the same message, and in his hand an unsealed letter. So what are the common tactics of the enemies used to hinder the work of God? Well, in this story, the Jews have been living in Israel without walls around the city of Jerusalem because they rebelled against God during the reign of the kings. The Lord judged them and sent them to exile in Babylon. After 70 years in exile, small remnants started to return to the land of Israel. In chapter 1, the Lord stirred Nehemiah, a man serving under the king of Persia, to come back to Jerusalem and inspire the remnants to rebuild the wall of the capital city and to help restore the worship of Israel. In chapter 6, Nehemiah had completed the walls but had not added the gates. Because of the progress, the certainty of completion, the attacks of the enemies increased. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to the actual tactics. Let's take a look at what these are. 1, discernment comes from knowing the Word of God. Okay, so one of the tactics is to challenge our sense of discernment. Therefore, we need to be able to use our gifts of discernment. Discernment comes from understanding human nature. 3, discernment comes from prayer. Enemy's tactic of persistence. Enemy uses persistence. Enemy uses persistence in over and over and over. You know, it's very interesting when we look at the enemy's tactic of slander and gossip. Okay, the only way to do that is to confront it with truth. The enemy's tactic of infiltration through false teachings. Enemy's tactic of psychological warfare. All right, these are all tactics we hear when I've read through, and we all look at the rules for radicals, pretty much along these lines. The enemy's tactic of immediately attacking after victory. The enemy's tactic of infiltration through compromise. Okay, so the only way we can overcome this is with that gift of discernment. We have to be able to discern right and wrong, good from evil, God from the devil. But we're living in a world that's all backwards. We have a media which is compromised, that is telling people that the things that are bad in the world are really good. They want to paint Antifa as a bunch of good guys. MS-13 as a bunch of good guys. Well, painting Americans who support the president as being bad guys simply because they support the president, who they think is racist, but they didn't think he was racist before he ran for president, only after he started running for president, because then it was going to challenge what they wanted to do. It's a big mess, my friend. It's a big mess, but we're the ones who can solve the problem. If we continue to let ourselves get lied to, if we continue to believe the lies without questioning them, then we are going to continue to be fooled. We must recognize each and every day this is a spiritual battle. We must recognize each and every day that the enemy tries to deceive us. We must understand every day the enemy is trying to control how we think, what we say, and what we do. Yet the power of Christ that flows through us is one of freedom, that frees us from all of these deceptions. So we must therefore put on this armor of God, protect ourselves with the Christ light, so that we can shine bright in this world to see through all of these illusions. And when we see them, not be afraid to call them out. Because evil wants good people to stand down, not say anything. Oh, I'm afraid I might get in trouble if I do that. You know what? Maybe if we don't do anything, we're going to be in trouble. There's that saying, bad things happen when good people say and do nothing. So now, my friends, is the time for good people to say something. Okay? Evil is trying to work its way in the world, and it's working its way in ways that we are not seeing. We must pray. We must put on the armor of God. Let's trust the plan of God, and all will be well. That's it, my friends. I'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. Have a good day. Peace. God bless you. I'm out of here.